podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
I'm Gary Birtles, one of the old gits from a long time ago. You've got to tune into Tricky Talks, I believe, so just do it. All the best.
Robertson, the first time we've seen them attack them, and there's Francis! Well, that's what I wanted to see Robertson do. And still Robertson, getting his shot in, and a goal! Robertson!
Hello, welcome to the Tricky Talks podcast. It's the day after the afternoon before, and 24 hours later, it's still handball. We hope you enjoyed listening to our emergency rage podcast yesterday. Here to discuss the game a little bit more is Chelsey. How are you doing, Chelsey? You missed it yesterday. You missed the other two having a right old moan.
I missed it, but I saw everything that I needed to see. That is all I'm going to say. The rage is still very much inside of me today. So I'm very looking forward to just debriefing, getting it all off my chest. And this,
you'll have your moment. You'll have your moment in a minute, Chelsey. But first of all, Kate's here as well. Have you managed to calm down a little bit, Kate, or are you still furious?
I mean, I've had a night's sleep, sort of calmed down a little bit. Like you said, it's still handball. But yeah.
It will always be handball, won't it, Mollo? That will never change. There'll always be an asterisk against that result.
Well, it says 3-2 in the papers this morning, or on the internet, as I should say, in modern parlance. But we'll know. Thank goodness there's nothing riding on it. But yeah, it's still handball. Deliberate handball is deliberate handball. The rules don't apply if it's deliberate handball.
Yeah, the final score will always be known as the referee 3, Forest 2.
Yes.
Right, let's give Chelsey a chance to vent her spleen then. The other two got it off their chest yesterday. Now it's your opportunity, Chelsey, so take it away.
I just don't understand how any human being can see that and give that and not think as a deliberate handball. It's so blatantly obvious. I haven't heard one pundit. I watch multiple people on YouTube and everything. No one has said that was not a handball. I don't understand. And even Man United players didn't celebrate. It's quite clear and obvious that they also think that it was handball as well. I just even Roy Keane, Gary Neville, who is Mr. Man United, even said that it was a handball. And I can't remember who I saw online, but someone said, "Oh yeah, just the referee should be wearing a Man United shirt," because that's what it felt like. You know, you got VAR saying go and look at the screen, which is oh yeah, obvious handball. Oh, do you know what? I'm going to ignore that, and then I'm just going to do whatever I want to do anyway. And what winds me up the most is that if we were still in that relegation battle and we needed that point, and that 1 point could have stopped us from being relegated, I would have been a lot more angry than what I am now, and I know I'm still coming across quite angry. But I just feel I remember I saw a clip on there when I was watching the highlights, and Neville said that he was shocked in every single way because no one could understand why it was not given a handball, and then the referee said it was accidental. Accidental? My backside was that accidental. You could see it came off his hip, but he controlled it off his hip, and then it went onto his hand to bring it down to score. Absolute disgrace. And I've said it here before, if any one of us are crap at our job, what happens? We get the sack, and that's exactly what it should be. I'm sorry, that really ticked me off, I tell you. But yes, I'm just, okay, rant over, sorry.
Oh, keep going, Chelsey. It's good stuff.
I just don't get it. I have nephews who are 6 and 8, and they would be able to see that as handball. It's come on now, just have a brain and just actually realise that it was a handball. Or are you just so ignorant that you did see it was a handball, but you thought, now I'll just decide to give it to Man United anyway because, they're a top 6 club, like everyone keeps blooming saying. It just winds me up no end. And you cannot help but say that if the shoe was on the other foot, you know full well that our goal would have been disallowed. It's double standards, and I cannot stand it.
Well said. Well said.
On a deep breath.
Deep breath. Go and get a drink.
Yeah.
Have a stiff one, Chelsey.
It's only water.
I've been reading today, Kate, about the process for how VAR referrals to the monitor should work, and I won't go into the technicalities, but one of the points that stood out for me is that in the eventuality where there is a really hard decision and it's technically difficult to come to a conclusion, then the referee is obliged to think about what would football say. You know, in this instance, football is saying it was a handball, so he has to take that into account as well, is in terms of what's the least controversial call to make. What would the general consensus be if this was football in general deciding it? And they are obliged to think along those lines, and clearly the referee didn't even get that far, did he?
Well, I suppose it's what you quantify as football, because there's the top six football, isn't there? The big six, not the top six, and then there's the rest of us. And I think he had his top six, big six glasses on, didn't he? And like I said yesterday, everything about him, his body language, his mannerisms, I just saw him desperate to give that goal to Man U. And that's how it felt, and that's what he did. And, do you know, obviously we put the clip that I took of us singing 3-2 to the referee. And, you know, there was a fair amount of referee chanting. That was probably the only one that I could post online. But loads of comments on there from Forest fans, football fans saying you were absolutely robbed. And then comments on there from the Man U collective saying, well, you got off lightly. It should have been 6. We could have scored this. We could have... But you didn't.
Yeah, how
you know?
humble of them.
Like, you could say that about any number of games, any number of fixtures. Oh, you could have. I mean, look at when we were having, I don't know, umpteen shots on goal. I know they weren't all real, or it didn't feel like they were, but, you know, we could have had. The score was the score. They won by 1 goal, and 1 goal should have been ruled out for handball, according to pretty much everyone that doesn't wear those big 6 glasses. So if you're thinking about football and what's fair and what's right, then you absolutely give that as a handball. If you're thinking about, well, I think we'd quite like Manchester United to finish on a few more points, then you do exactly what that referee did and give them an unfair advantage.
I just don't understand why he didn't look at the monitor. That's what I can't get my head around.
He did.
And I'm not...
Well,
he did look at the monitor, did he?
Yeah, he did. That's the point. That's what makes it worse.
I didn't see that on the highlights. Wow.
Yeah,
he
did.
stood there for ages, Chelsey. He stood there looking at it. And
How did I miss that?
Yeah, he stood there looking at it. And then he kind of did this thing where he sort of started to edge away a little bit from the monitor because he knew he was about to say something absolutely outrageous. So he saw it, Chelsey. He saw all the angles. He saw the freeze frames. He saw the slowdown. He saw him hold it to his hip. You know when you're trying to get something to the car, when you've been to Lidl and you've forgot to put them in the boot, and you've got things under your arms and all down, and you're holding them on your hips.
Yep.
Accidentally do that, do we? No, because that's exactly what it looked like to me. It looked like he'd got a loaf of bread too many that he couldn't carry, and he was holding it on the side of his hip. Load of rubbish.
Wow.
And that was the thing, Chelsea, as well, that VAR told him it was a handball and to go and review it. So VAR, as we said yesterday, VAR did their job properly.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I've heard people slating VAR, and I'm a bit like, well, VAR's not the problem in this situation. It's the ref. I'm sure he's an absolutely, lovely bloke, and I'm not dissing him as a human being, but the decision that he made was absolutely wrong. And and no one is arguing against that. And of course, bless you, Man United, but hey.
Yeah, let's go back to that infamous tweet that Forrest put out at Everton, Mollo, and where it got several 100 million views, and it kick-started a process where that was reviewed on this TV show that Michael Owen was talking with Howard Webb several days later, where they reviewed it. You know, those 3 penalty incidents that were the talk of at the time. I haven't yet seen anything relating to this incident yet. I think it's probably too soon, but I'm waiting for some official statement come out admitting they were wrong or the referee was wrong. That's what I would like to see now. It doesn't take anything away from... It's no consolation because we're never going to get a point back or anything, but they need to admit that the referee was wrong, and the referee needs to be suspended from this week's Premier League games for making a basic incompetent error.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think I'm not one for sacking people left, right and centre as a rule in terms of people working their way up to the top of their job. But what this referee needs to do this summer is go out and play football and learn how the game works rather than just following stuff he's read on paper, because he's clearly never played football. And I said it last night, every Sunday league player in the country is watching that going, how has he got away with that? Yeah, it was a beautiful piece of control, but it was illegal and it wasn't accidental. So the argument that the people keep putting out there about it hit his thigh first and it's not an accidental handball, so it's a free kick, full stop. But I want to take a slightly different tack. The apology when it comes means nothing, though, Simon. I couldn't give a monkey about any of that anymore. It's gone. We take our medicine. We have a good rant about it. But I've used for analysis. I always read opposition comments. I've got to read 2 short Man United comments to you just to show the opposite side, because not all Man United fans are idiots, to be fair. Outside the ground, they were like, yeah, that was a bit ropey. But there's a guy, or I don't know if it's a guy or a girl, to be fair, but the picture looks like a guy. Chet T on the Man United Analysis review said, great entertaining game. I felt a bit shameful celebrating that second goal, but really and truly it shouldn't have mattered if we finished our chances. That's true to an extent. Yeah. But then 2 comments down, Matty G, whoever you are on Analysis, good game, ref was great. You forgot to say, for you. And there was various other comments, and I love this one because we sang this, didn't we? So shout out to Haddy Maguire 5, who's one of the Finalysis folk from Man United. We are Celtic in disguise, and I think that kind of says it all, doesn't it? Because we were singing that, weren't we? Are you Celtic in disguise? There's nothing we can do about it now. Nothing's going to change. But I've always said the issue is grassroots. Referees aren't supported to move through, etc., etc. So you end up with what's left over, and we're suffering 20, 30 years now, I suppose, of referee abuse. So just people that are either very thick-skinned or prepared to put up with it to get where they get to. And when the apology does come, or the letter, they should frame it with all the others, because it means nothing. But like I say, what makes it so much worse than all the others is how he was sent to the monitor and looked at it and couldn't see that it was handball. I know people have said corruption and cheating and everything else. I think there's that subconscious bias came in for him, not just because they're part of the cartel, but he lives in Lancashire, in Preston. So when he's walking around doing his shopping and going, if he's got kids, delivering his kids to school, or if he goes to his local pub, I don't know what his life is, or just wandering down the high street, in reality, he's far more likely to bump into Man United fans than he is Forest fans. Not to say there aren't any in Preston, but on a daily basis. And they'll be, that I'm not suggesting he's stuck there thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to walk down the street, but it's going to be there. So the question is, why on earth would a guy living in Preston, whoever he supports, be refereeing a Man United game? Because if he gets something horribly wrong against them, like he has for us, he's going to suffer pelters. And it's a job at the end of the day, and you shouldn't be abused in your neighbourhood as bad as he was for that. So it's just the whole thing is messed up, and it's not cost us anything. Well, other than we know probably a few quid moving further up the league. You could argue we've had some quite good VAR decisions this year, so maybe it has evened out. I don't know how you want to look at it. That level of incompetence, Chelsea's right, in a way should be sacked. But for me, then what? We get an even more incompetent person coming through because he's the best of what's been coming through for a reason. And that's what's scary. Ways to solve this problem with referees. And when I watch referees from abroad refereeing, they don't seem to have quite the same level of incompetence we have. And is it the rules interfering with their ability to do the job? Is it? I don't know, because there's a lot of debate about the rules, wasn't there, since that happened? And certain people that associate themselves with Man United and claim to be fans is talking about, accidental, came off the hip and all that rubbish. But it was a deliberate handball. It's handball. Credit to Gary Neville, who is probably as one-eyed a commentator as you can get. Even he said it was disgraceful. And the guy on there that I quoted said he felt a bit embarrassed celebrating it. Says everything, doesn't it? And it kind of, we didn't play brilliantly. If you're going to go to Old Trafford when they're not playing badly, they're not the same team they were last year, are they, where they were garbage. You're going to need to ride your luck, and you're going to need your officials to do their job well. And for the 2 out of the last 3 years, that hasn't happened, because there was that ridiculous penalty against Danilo 2 years ago, and now this. Both games ended 3-2. So, short answer, we will get a letter of apology or something, but it's going to mean nothing, is it?
Yeah, unfortunately. Sorry, go on, Chelsey. Go on.
No. I was saying, like, in terms of like him being sacked and stuff. I was just more of like the fact of like, if we were all but kept being continuously bad at our job, in the real world, we would get sacked. I don't think he should be sacked, but I just think, are you fit enough to referee in the Premier League? Should you go down to the Championship? It's that kind of level of it. It was such a clear and obvious handball. And that is what is worrying about it, isn't it? That he, for some reason, didn't see it.
I mean, unfortunately, it spoiled what was at that point a decent game, and it still ended up being a decent game. And it was, I thought Forest acquitted themselves well, Kate, in terms of their performance. Yeah, they, like Molo said, they rode their luck a little bit throughout the game, and but without you take that goal away, they'd have been well in it, wouldn't they? And it spoiled what was probably a half decent or more performance away from home from Forest.
Yeah, I think we were doing okay. At half-time we were 1-0 down, but we didn't feel like we were getting absolutely battered. We didn't feel like we were out the game, and that was something, we commented on. We felt there was something to bring to that game in the second half, and we did. And I do think that the injustice of it did put a bit of extra life into them, but equally we were able to get at them at times. It was end to end, a lot of it. There were a lot of chances for both teams. It wasn't all one-way traffic. And towards the end, we all hoped that one of those chances was going to hit the back of the net, because you felt we deserved at least a point out of that. And there were some really strong performances. I know you spoke a little bit last night on Door on Tour about Dominguez. I absolutely loved him yesterday. I thought he was fantastic. And, I always go on about the player that catches my eye. That was very much Dominguez. Dominguez and Anderson together seems to be a really nice combination. We all had a bit of a moment when Morgan came on at the beginning and he wasn't wearing his mask before it kicked off. And I had a bit of a maternal moment where I turned to the woman next to me and went, well, he needs to put his mask on, doesn't he? Where's his mask? Somebody get him his mask, because I don't want him. But then obviously you put it on and you were worried that his performance levels might be different or might drop, but you didn't feel that they were. He was still going in for stuff. He was, again, great to see him back out there scoring goals. I know that Morato got his first goal for Forest. I didn't love him all the way through, but enjoyed Backwell when he came. I could go on. We did good. I think on the whole, it was a better performance than possibly I thought it would be.
Yeah, it was. And we will talk about some players' individual performances in a moment, but just as a general team, Molo, I thought Forest looked dangerous going forwards. Even after going a goal down early on, they didn't let it bother them and they continued to press forward. And I thought they controlled the game without creating too much. I thought they looked in control and looked well capable of getting back into it. And I thought United looked a bit vulnerable defensively as well. So overall, I was pleased how Forest were playing going forwards. We'll talk about their defensive performance in a minute, but what were your thoughts about them going forwards? Because I thought they were knocking it around really well at times.
Yeah, I think the first half had the feeling of a bit of a pre-season / end of season on the beach game, didn't it, so to speak? But we controlled the midfield for about 60, 70 minutes, didn't we? Thought Dominguez was really good again. Anderson was different levels, wasn't he, compared to everybody else on the pitch, other than, as much as I can't stand him, Fernandes. And I thought we attacked really well. I thought both teams looked really vulnerable at the back. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the view from the away end, but their pitch always appears massive. I know it can't be. There just seem to be gaps everywhere, didn't there? Particularly for the last half hour or 20 minutes when we changed our midfield so much. But yeah, we looked like we could score, but we also certainly looked like we could concede. I thought if he hadn't made a mistake for the first goal, I think Sells would have been in the running for man of the match, wouldn't he? Because he made some fantastic saves. If he just would have come for that cross for the first one, maybe. But there we go. Yeah, we look dangerous going forward. And as I think I caught Kate there, sorry about disappearing for a coughing fit. I thought, apart from a couple of really underhit passes, Gibbs-White, once he got into his stride, was as if nothing was wrong with him, as if he hadn't got a sore head or whatever. He was superb. So, all in all, very promising.
Yeah, I did think Forest struggled to cope with Bruno Fernandes, especially in the second half, and we know he got the assist record in that game. And you know what? Credit to him. He's had a good season. He got Football Writers Player of the Year, I believe. And it's those sorts of records I like to see broken. And and you guys were obviously there to see that. But I thought he had a decent game as well. And you could tell he was desperately trying to grab that record, even a couple of opportunities in the second half, which he would have probably been better off shooting and trying to score. He was trying to pass it and lay it off. He definitely wanted to get the record outright by himself, and hopefully he'll do that next weekend. I think they're playing at Brighton, but I did think he was pulling the strings a bit for them in the second half, and they did create quite a few chances. Chelsey, I don't know whether you want to comment on those, but they probably made the highlights for sure, I think.
Oh, what, Man United's chances, you mean?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, mate. They wanted it, but I definitely think that, we gave as good as we got. Obviously, the chances that they did have, I mean, Sells, obviously with not, excluding the goals, the saves that he did make were, they were brilliant. I know, was that in Buemo where it came off the post? I was all a bit chaotic at that point, and there was kind of shots being fired everywhere, and I was, when I was watching it, I was a bit oh god, right, okay. But yeah, they performed well. Take the handball situation out of it. Obviously, like you said, it was very clear in some bits where Fernandes was definitely trying to cross it over for a goal rather than shoot himself. But at the end of the day, that's 3 points on their board, and thank God we're not in a position where we needed that extra point.
I do want to talk about a couple of individual performances though, and I want to bunch the first two players together, and that's Anderson and Gibbs-White, because they were pulling the strings as well. I thought they both had really, really good games in their own way, and that was a typical game that you can't underestimate just how important those two guys are for Forest heading into next season, and remains to be seen what happens over the summer. Kate, you had Anderson's 2 assists, you had, which were absolutely, the first cross especially for Morato was an absolutely brilliant cross. And I'll tell you what, that United fan who has that channel that Gary Neville bought, Mark Goldbridge, I saw a clip.
He's not a United fan.
Well,
he's made himself. He's from Mansfield area, and his real name is I can't remember now. But he was a Forest fan as a kid, but he changed for the money side of it, and fair play to him. He made lots of money.
Say that in inverted commas. Yeah, we'll call him Brent then, shall we, Kate? He actually acknowledged what a great cross it was, and it was Beckham-esque, and he put it on a plate for Morato. But let's talk about both Anderson and Gibbs-White's performance, because I thought they were outstanding.
Absolutely. They run the show, don't they? And it's so good to watch. Still, every so often, you have to take a moment and go, that's our Forest team out there. They're our Forest boys. Absolutely smashing it out the park. And again, we're talking eyes are on the World Cup, aren't they? And we've said it before with Morgan. He had every reason to never play again this season. Nobody would have been surprised if he'd gone, do you know what? My face hurts and I'm going to sit the rest of this out. Absolutely hasn't done that. He has stepped up again. He has put on that mask, and he's performed brilliantly. Sometimes the big questions are coming up about will they stay? Will we keep them? And do you know what? One of the biggest draws for both of them staying has to be them playing together, because they're brilliant, and the way they feed off each other is an absolute joy to watch. So, yeah. And like you say, the cross for Morato was absolutely inch perfect, wasn't it? Absolutely inch perfect.
It wasn't Beckham-esque, though. It was Robbo-esque.
Fair. I'm sure he'd take that. But yeah, and just skill like that, it doesn't come every day. and it was brilliant. Yeah.
I'm going to ask this question to you first, Mollo, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts as well, Chelsey and Kate, because I know you've got to go shortly, Mollo, and due to your son's birthday. So happy 21st to George.
Happy birthday.
But which of the two is more important to Forest out of Anderson and Gibbs-White? It's a really hard question. I've been debating this one, and I'm honestly struggling to find an answer. But in your eyes, which one is the more important to making Forest tick or the team tick? Where do you sit on that one?
I think from a Forest point of view, purely, not where they end up and who's worth more, but from a Forest point of view, I think Gibbs-White. I'm not saying he's a better player or he's worth more. They're both absolutely fantastic players. Then Kate's nailed it there. They almost have become a bit of a partnership together as well. But I just think what he brings is irreplaceable, whereas what Anderson brings is irreplaceable in one player, but you can rejig your midfield by a couple of really good players and share the workload instead of him carrying so much of the workload in midfield on his own at times. You know what I'm saying, don't you? And that's all I could say, but I just don't want him to go because the next step of his development, I wrote an article about it last summer, was to see more assists, more goals. Well, we're seeing that now, aren't we? He's got everything. He has not got a single weakness in his game now. And of course he could score more goals, but like you say, the 2 assists, but one of those assists was better than Beckham, as you say. It was Robbo-esque. It was absolutely inch perfect, and the curl. What was funny, and I can't have been the only one because everyone around us, I bet Kate will remember this now. When we took, I think it was a corner, wasn't it? And they took it to Anderson. It didn't look a good pass. It turned it into a 50-50. I'm like, and he turned his man, put that across. Yeah. He turned what was a bit of a sloppy pass, if we're being honest, because you don't plan to put someone in a 50-50 situation. Well, he's that good at 50-50 as you perhaps could. And he turned it into a great pass. So the answer to the question is, they're both fantastic players. Just keep them both. Sell someone else. Sangari, some people are sniffing after him. He can go for 30 or 40 million. He's a good player, but he's very replaceable by somebody like Dominguez, for argument's sake.
What about you, Chelsey? Because you're a big Anderson fan, I know, and I'll ask you the same question. Where do you stand? Are you going to lean towards Anderson as he's your favourite, or do you see the importance of Gibbs-White, like Mollo?
Is trying to look at them as like all-rounders, and they are both all-rounders. They are outstanding. They are naturally talented, and I agree with Mollo. I 100% want to be able to keep them both. Oh, and I do. I love Anderson, but I can't help but think that Gibbs-White is slightly more adaptable. When you look at him as an individual player, maybe, and very slightly, Anderson is still definitely adaptable, but I'm just trying to think of how, like, he's evolved and, like, his consistency with things. I think maybe he just tips Anderson just over the edge.
But we are comparing apples with pears, aren't we? Not apples with apples.
Exactly.
My argument is it's hard to buy what Gibbs-White brings.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because he can open up a defence and he drives the team in a way that digs us out and all that. And he's got that magic dust, hasn't he, sometimes?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm trying to find like the most finest little differences between them as players. But like even like Gibbs-White's goal, for example, like obviously I know it was Anderson's cross, but it was almost like give it here kind of thing. And then he took it early. The keeper was on the back foot and he surprised them all. And it's just them little things that he can just do. And it just it's just so natural, and that's like stuck between a rock and a hard place trying to make that decision, isn't it? Yeah,
it's like
Kate, you go.
Kate, do you think it's like trying to choose between your children? Who's your favourite?
Simon, I would never do that. We've been treated equally and loved exactly the same.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that if you're watching kids. I have to agree that the obvious answer to that question is Morgan Gibbs-White, because we've built our team around him and our style of play. We've spoken many times about him being our talisman. He's also our leader they all look to him. You know, everybody on that pitch looks to Morgan Gibbs-White. And also we've seen what can happen when Morgan Gibbs-White doesn't play, and it did not make for good watching. The other thing I think with Morgan is he has an opportunity right now to become an absolute Forest legend if he hangs around, because we love him and he's brilliant. And, you know, in general, players don't stick around these days, do they? And if we do manage to keep Anderson, and I hope we do, because none of what we're saying about Morgan takes anything away from what an absolute baller Anderson is, and how amazing he is, and how much we enjoy having him as part of our squad. You know, it is a very difficult question. But I do look at Morgan and I do think he could be that player that sticks around and becomes an absolute legend. And I hope he does, because we love him and he's playing his best football and he's absolutely flourishing in what has been a difficult season, let's be honest. So I'm going to go with Morgan. I'm going to hope he hangs around and becomes that player and that legend that we all want him to be.
Got a question for you, Kate, about Morgan.
Go on.
Do you think the Wolves fans still think we overpaid for him?
I think, to expand on the point you made there, Kate, about him being a legend, and I said pretty much the same thing on Door last night around him possibly becoming Forest's all-time leading goal scorer in the Premier League. I think I've mentioned it before on the pod, and he's heading quickly towards being a solid selection for Forest's all-time greatest 11 kind of team if he carries on the way he's been playing. So I think everybody's got valid points about why they think Morgan Gibbs-White is more important. And for me, that is probably why, because he's heading quickly towards that, whereas Anderson is not yet there, I don't think. We all recognise his abilities and his value and how he's slotted into that England team like he's been there for absolute years, and he's going to have a great World Cup. But I think, Gibbs-White, in terms of being important to Forest, I think he probably sits above Elliot Anderson at this moment in time. But another player who's important to Forest at the weekend was Morato, surprisingly enough, getting his first goal for the team. A great header from that Robbo-esque cross. What are your thoughts as you were there, guys? I'll give you first dibs to comment, Molo, because I know, again, you've got to go shortly. But it must have been pleasing to see Morato scoring. And I did wonder, when we saw Milenkovic playing up front at the end, I thought it's because he didn't want to see his mate score more goals than him this season, because Milenkovic hasn't scored yet and Morato has now. And I thought Milenkovic isn't going to be happy with that. But what did you think of Morato scoring from that cross?
Oh, very pleased for him. He scored, took it well. And weirdly, one of my friends that we were with was getting frustrated because he had made a couple of mistakes. And I said at a previous call, I said, Morato's going to score today now, just to annoy you. And he did, and he celebrated, obviously, went nuts. And when they started singing the song, I looked at him, and it was just one of those, comedy moments that you get, because I'm pleased he scored it. He showed everything about himself in that game, didn't he? From some terrific heads, terrific tackles, a couple of really good passes, to also clumsily kicking fresh air when he was about to clear the ball, losing his man. He's a young defender learning his trade, and I just wish he'd learn a little bit faster, if I'm being brutal. But I think the stick he gets is over the top. He really, if he was learning his game, the type of defender he'd be better playing alongside Murillo in terms of the partnership, the way you'd expect it to work better, because he's not the quickest, and neither. But you've got to deal with the cards you've been dealt. And obviously Jacques Cunha looked really promising, but has dropped off a bit after his stint playing as a right back, so perhaps that's part of the thinking. But I was delighted for him to get a goal. Delighted for anyone to get a goal at that point, because it was raging. It was just very nice.
Yeah, one player who perhaps didn't live up to expectations, and unfairly so, I think, because he's been playing all right recently, was Nets. I think he got exposed a little bit at full-back against the top-quality side. But what were your thoughts, seeing his performance firsthand? It was difficult to keep track on the TV, Kate, but What did you make of Luca Netz playing against a top 3 team away from home?
Yeah, defensively lacking is how it came across. But then maybe that is unfair. You know, Molo's just said young players learning their trade and all that. And so there are going to be areas of his game that are lacking. And he'd had a couple of really good spells, but I guess we were on top and winning those games, and that one was a bit different. So, yeah, work to be done. I still think massive potential. But, yeah, not defensively not as strong as we might have liked him to be.
Does he remind you of anyone who we signed a few years ago as a right-back when he first played for us?
Stop it.
No, genuinely. That's what I said when we were talking about the game. The things he lacks are the same things Nico lacked when we first signed him, aren't they? And look at Nico now. So, that's a big statement to make, but he's good on the ball, isn't he?
Yeah, and I'm not by any means getting on his back. I still think he's a player with a lot of potential, and it was a difficult game for so many reasons. Like you said, it had that feel to it of being a bit of a end of season, pre-season, not a lot on it. And, we said that ourselves, didn't we, on the concourse before the game? It was a really difficult game to get up for. We've had the whole Europa thing happen. We know we're trudging into the end of the season. I do think it's also affected by the fact that we know our last game is Bournemouth, and so it was difficult for us. So it must have been difficult for them. And let's keep going with him, give him a chance. But yeah, there was definitely a weakness exposed in terms of his defensive prowess, shall we say?
Okay, shall we do a Molo's moment if you have one, Molo?
It's got to be, hasn't it? Gibbs-White's goal, absolute class. That finish was on another level. When the ball came in, I actually initially thought I had to do like a double take because I wasn't ready for someone to shoot, let alone the keeper. The keeper didn't move, did he? And that's no disrespect to the keeper. Just to take it the way he did, that's the form he's in, though, isn't it? Nearly everything he's doing seems to come off. So for me, it was that comfortably. Just 'cause it was such a good moment. That shame it didn't transpire to be the part of the comeback. But a 3-3 draw that Des said it could be before the game.
Yeah, and Morgan Gibbs-White's done all he can now to get in that England squad because it's announced on Friday. He can't do any more, can he? He's surely got to be in that squad. If he's not in that squad, then you can probably bracket Thomas Tuchel with Michael Salisbury in being incompetent.
Don't you think, though? He's playing at such a level now that, to me, the conversation isn't should he go. The conversation shouldn't be should he go and be the best number 10 that we've got in this league to back up Bellingham. The conversation should be should he replace Bellingham and they accommodate Bellingham somewhere. I think Bellingham's a world class player, but at the moment Gibbs-White is putting in world class performances and has done for a couple of months at least, or since January. So for me, that should be the not is he better than Palmer or Foden or Rodgers and all these other players that are really good players, but are levels below him at the moment.
I think if he does make the squad, I think there's a good chance he'll get some game time because of the heat in the US and Canada and Mexico. They're going to have to make regular substitutions. They're going to have to rotate the squad. They've got a lot more games to potentially play because it's a bigger tournament. So I think there is a role for Gibbs-White to play if he gets in the squad. And
well,
of course,
who would you have on left? Him or he used to pick what's his name at Newcastle, didn't he? So
Gordon.
Who would you have on left at the moment? Him or Gordon?
Yeah, you'd have Gibbs-White, wouldn't you? Clearly,
all day long.
Yeah, I mean it's great. We hope he makes the squad, and Anderson's going to make the squad. But don't forget, we've got Chris Wood in the New Zealand squad, Tyler Bindon in the New Zealand squad. Sangare is going to the World Cup as well. Unfortunately, Matt Sells isn't, which is a decision I can't understand for the life of me why he's not in the squad. So that one's just as baffling. So there are going to be some Forest players in the World Cup to keep an eye out for. Shall we do our penultimate man of the matches then of the season so far today?
Yeah.
Go on, you kick us off, Kate.
I'm going Dominguez. I don't mind being on my own on that one. I'm going Dominguez.
Right, Dominguez, Molo, who are you going for?
Anderson. But that says a lot about our midfield, doesn't it? Dominguez and Anderson, first two shouts.
Yeah, I'm going for Anderson as well. Right, excellent stuff. Right, just to round off Man United then, we did put out a fun little poll on Instagram, didn't we, to ask our followers if they thought it was handball or not. Does anyone want to read out the results? I've sent them into the chat.
Have a look.
So read the options, Kate, and
I will do.
Results for each.
Okay.
So the question was it handball?
Wow, what a tricky choice. Yes, it was handball, 58%. I carefully weighed the options. Yes, got 26%. On the fence, but yes, got 1 vote. And then after extensive research, yes, got 2 votes. So, I think we can safely say
There we go. Yeah, just a little. So we're going to start running more regular polls now, aren't we, to engage with our followers and share on the pod. Right, thanks for that, guys. Kate, have you got a quiz for us this week?
I do have a quiz.
Excellent.
We'll try and squeeze it in before Mollo has to go.
So, I was going to say, squeeze it in. Mollo's going to have to go as soon as you read the quiz out, so he's going to have to spend
I don't think he is.
days, a week or so.
Ingrained on his memory.
Yeah.
So, simple question. When is the last time Nottingham Forest won a match against Bournemouth?
I remember that game.
I knew you would.
Yeah, I paid twice to get in.
Did
Oh,
you?
I know the one because you've told the story before.
Yeah, where they lost my tickets. Where I had to pick them up and they didn't have a clue. So I paid again and went in.
Is it really that long? Well, on that note, then thanks for that, Kate. We'll come back to that one. Right, so Chelsea's dropped. Unfortunately, we've also now lost Mollo. I think he got scared by your quiz question, Kate, didn't he, in terms of not knowing the answer. But before we draw to a close and get the answer to your quiz, let's talk a little bit about Bournemouth. And it is the last game of the season. What are your expectations or objectives even coming out of that game? There's nothing to play for much in terms of league position now. But what would you like to see come out of that game? Because Bournemouth, don't forget, are trying to get in the Champions League, so they're going to be well up for it. You'd like to think, given the fact that Bournemouth are also our bogey team, they're not just going to simply roll over and let Bournemouth win, but hopefully they won't be like that. Do you expect a competitive game, or what are you hoping to get out of it?
I do expect a competitive game. I know we have an awful record against Bournemouth, and isn't it, like you said, just an absolute treat that they now need to win this to potentially get Champions League. So they will be definitely wanting to. But you know what's a really good example? You know, we were listening to the West Ham and Newcastle game on the way home, and there was an element of you that kind of wanted Newcastle to do that, you know, to just let them have that, because, you know, it puts more pressure on Spurs and it makes that whole relegation battle a bit more interesting. And, you know, and they didn't, did they? You know, Newcastle bossed it and they won it. And I expect the same of Forest, because the City ground will be rocking. It's the last game of the season. You know, let's go out with a bang. And we do have to also accept that it could be the last time we see Elliot Anderson in a Forest shirt and some others. So I do expect them to give it a good go. And weirdly, I've put this game down as one that we're going to lose all season because it's Bournemouth and because that's always what we think when it comes to Bournemouth. But somehow the injustice of what happened at the weekend makes me think maybe we're going to get the thing, you know, the shock is going to be that we get something and that we beat Bournemouth and go out getting that monkey off our back, shall we say. So yes, it's going to be tricky. Your smart money would be on us to lose, but Forest never do what you expect them to do. So let's go in there, have a really good time, and hopefully, get to see a result.
I know you have to drop as well shortly. Who do you think we'll be saying farewell to?
Again, I think the obvious answer to that is Anderson, but I have a feeling that Murillo will go. I don't know. There's just something about the way he's been towards the end of this season. And, you know, I'm not saying he's not injured, but you've got Morgan Gibbs-White out there with his mask on, giving absolutely everything. And you've got Murillo going off to Qatar for an extended family holiday. So my inclination is perhaps Murillo. I wouldn't be surprised if Anderson goes. And like I said before, I don't begrudge him it. But much like last season, you know, the transfer window success story was Morgan Gibbs-White. let's go on better Marinakis, shall we? Let's keep Morgan and Anderson. And if Willow wants to go. Okay.
Absolutely. My thoughts are, I wouldn't be surprised if Anderson goes, but one to keep an eye on is probably Taiwo Awoniyi, the old cult hero he is. He's not played regularly, and until we get towards the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if Awoniyi goes, personally, but we shall see.
We bumped into Taiwo Awoniyi's brother in Costa before the game yesterday. Yeah, it was so funny. And he recognised Ben, obviously, and came over and said hello. And they were chattering away, and he's like, it's Taiwo Awoniyi's brother. I'm like that. Hi. Nice to meet you. And it was lovely, and just lovely. And I think we could see them from where we were sitting as well. See them like when he came on celebrating and everything. But that was a nice moment.
Right, let's draw our episode to a close. We'll finish off with the quiz answer, Kate, shall we? Remind everyone what the question was, because Mollo has been scared off by the answer. And to be honest with you, I probably won't even get it right myself. So just reveal the answer, Kate. You might as well.
So if I've got this right, and it does seem slightly improbable, on this season we did the double over them. So we beat them away and then we beat them at home. But the home game came later. So that means the last time we beat Bournemouth was the 25th of February, 2015. We won 2-1 at the City Ground. And it was... other little interesting bits. It was not long after Dougie Freedman had taken over, and the goals were scored by Lascelles and Lansbury.
Yeah, wouldn't have remembered that one. I would have perhaps got it had it been the Matty Fryatt goal in August that we know that Mollo went to and had a few ticket issues with that particular game because he's talked about it before on the show. But I wouldn't have said that February game. So we'll see. Hopefully it won't be. What's it, 11? So it's 11 years since we've last beaten Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can put an end to that on Sunday. Right, anything final, Kate, before we draw to a close?
No, I don't think so. Just let's have a great time. I think you're there, aren't you, at the weekend?
I am. Yep.
And Chelsey and her dad will be there, I'm sure, on the sofa, giving it large. Mollo will be there, obviously. I'll be there. So let's give them a good send-off for this season.
Absolutely. Right, that's it from us. We'll be back with probably a review of that Bournemouth game in a week or so's time. In the meantime, thanks everyone for listening and for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.